everyone. I am Andy Anderson. My partner Ike Allen and I are the co-owners of Avaya University. Welcome and thank you so much for joining us. In this event, we are talking with some really incredible fellow experts. We're talking with therapists, yogis, psychologists, doctors, and more who are here to provide you with tools and strategies to help you experience greater happiness, peace, and joy in your life. Today, our guest is going to be talking about energy medicine yoga. And I am, as most of you know, I talk about yoga fairly regularly during these classes because I love it so much. So I'm so excited to talk about this with the fabulous Lauren Walker today. Hi, Lauren.
Hi, Andy. Nice to be here.
Yes, nice to have you here. And I want to tell everyone a little bit about you and your amazing work before we dive into this topic. So Lauren, for those of you who don't know her, is the author of Energy Medicine Yoga, Amplify the Healing Power of Your Yoga Practice, as well as the Energy Medicine Yoga Prescription. Both her books won the Nautilus Silver Award for Best Mind-Body Publication. She's been teaching yoga and meditation since 1997 and created Energy Medicine Yoga while teaching at Norwich University. She teaches EM yoga across the US and internationally and has been featured many times in things like Yoga Journal, Mantra Magazine, Yoga Digest, and she also published a featured article about her yoga work in the New York Times. And she was recently named one of the top 100 most influential yoga teachers in the US. So wow, I'm so excited to talk with you. This is going to be great. So let's just, I guess, start off with your yoga, right? You have energy medicine yoga. What is this? How did you create it? Tell us about it.
Yeah, okay. So I was teaching and practicing and studying yoga for about 10 years. And I had a thriving yoga studio, and I would take classes with, all of the the big name yogis, all of them yoga masters in this country. And I came to a real crossroads in my own practice and in my life as well. There was a lot of things going on. I call it the year of my lemony snicket year, right? So like everything went wrong. And I ended up leaving my town, leaving my yoga studio, and then leaving the country because this is when Bush took us into Iraq, and I was completely opposed to that war. And so I moved up to Canada as a war resistor and as just a place for me to just get away from everything that was kind of going wrong. And right before I moved, I was introduced to the work of Donna Eden through a friend of mine who had taken a workshop with her in Colorado. And she came over to my house and she's like, I got to show you this really cool thing. It's to get all your energies working. And I was like, okay. And so she showed me this little thing. You're thumping and you're doing all this. And I was like, oh, that's cool. That feels great. And then I moved up to Canada and I met a man who had been dying of an undiagnosed brain bleed. So he basically had an aneurysm that was bleeding in his brain, but nobody knew what was causing his illness. So he was lying on his mother's couch, essentially dying for 7 years. And he said the only thing that kept him alive in all that time was working on his chakras from a book that he read by this woman named Donna Eden. And I was like, whoa, that's pretty crazy to get 2 hits from Donna in 2 months in 2 different countries. That was something to me. So I went and took a course with her, and I was blown away. She is the most authentic, open-hearted, generous, powerful teacher I had ever met, like the real deal. And she is a living master. And I don't say that lightly because I have met a lot of people that have sort of tried to walk in that field, in that path. And she is as humble as they come. She would never say that about herself, and yet she is. And so I had been at this crossroads in my life of either I need to go and take more advanced yoga trainings because where I was at in my yoga, I was really stuck. Like it wasn't helping me resolve the other issues or the issues that were coming up in my life. It was great. It, did a lot of things, and because you practice yoga and a lot of your listeners know, it's a wonderful practice in and of itself. I mean, obviously, right? It's a 5,000-year-old tradition. It is powerful and healing. But I wasn't getting forward any more in it. So I had that opportunity. I was either going to go and find more advanced teachers and more advanced trainings, or I was going to go down this path, which now I call the miracle path, because Donna Eden herself is a miracle person. She healed herself from MS when everyone in Western medicine had given up on her. And through that process of healing herself, created what is called the Eden method, Eden energy medicine. So this really elegant, beautiful, and simple techniques of accessing the energy systems of the body. And energy is all that there is. The body looks solid, but it isn't solid at all. It is just made up of lattice works of energy, sound, and vibration. And those thoughts or ideas can seem very esoteric and sort of out there. And well, how do you access something you can't see or feel or touch? But actually, you can feel it. You can touch it. Many people can see it. You can train yourself to see it, but you can affect it in very simple ways. So the most, esoteric yoga practices can also get into those systems, but I found them to be way more complex than they needed to be. And I felt like that was almost because, yoga originally had been a very exclusive practice. And so they didn't want everybody to be practicing yoga like it is today. And so those fine practices which get into what are called the subtle bodies, the subtle energies, they're very, very difficult to access and even to understand. Whereas this work, I go into my niece's, kindergarten class, and I've got them all doing energy medicine and energy medicine yoga. It's simple, it's powerful, and the miracles that start unfolding when you start to practice these techniques are incredible. So I put them together. It's like take your chocolate and my peanut butter and put them together, and wow, energy medicine yoga was born. And I just haven't looked back because it has been unbelievably powerful and rewarding.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that story. So for people watching right now, obviously people are tuning into this event because they struggle with anxiety and or depression, maybe one, maybe both. So from that, how could our listeners benefit from practicing EM yoga as it relates to, let's start with anxiety first. And then do you have any actual practical things they might be able to take on, on their own without necessarily being in a yoga studio with you or whatever right now? Any suggestions there for anxiety?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, can I flip that and start with depression? Because they kind of go in a cycle, and anxiety comes actually a little bit later. Depression comes a little bit earlier. And so one of the lenses that we work with in EM yoga, one of the energy systems of the body, is called the 5 elements. It's from Chinese medicine, and it's a system of looking at everything in the world, everything in your body, everything in your life, everything in your mind falls into one of these 5 different elements. And so anxiety is in one element, it's called the fire element, and depression is in another element, it's called the water element. But pulling back just a little bit, one of the first rules of energy is that it needs to move. So you think about traffic, right? When traffic is flowing, you take the exit, you get to your job on time, you drop the kids off at school, you go swing by the coffee hut, you get your hot coffee, you keep going, you do whatever you need to do. Everybody's going in different directions and everything works smoothly. But if something stops that traffic, if there's an accident, or if there's construction, or something's going on, or there's, where I live, there's deer crossing the road, or there'll be, a pile of sheep walking across the road. So then what do? Traffic stops. And then that creates this effect of buildup behind it. And depression is energy that is stuck. And it's mental energy, but it's also physical energy in the body that is stuck. It's not able to move. And that's in the water element. And so you can think about it, it's like you're underwater. And if you've ever been depressed, you know that that's exactly how it feels. It's like everything is happening up there, but you can't really hear it. It kind of sounds woo, woo, woo. It's got that muffled quality. You're not fully engaged. You withdraw from life. You isolate, all of those things. And one of the prime things that needs to happen is things need to move. Your energy needs to move in order for you to release that stagnant energy and move out of that depression and into your life again, like come out of the water, come to the surface, and then be engaged in your life. And anxiety is sort of, I think of it as, it's like a real high, buzzy energy, right? And it's this disconnect from life. And if you think about, I don't have any plugs here that are handy, but you think about a plug, right? It's the 3-prong plugs.
Mm-hmm.
And that third prong is the grounding prong. And that goes into the little smiley face hole, you know, in the socket, right? And what that does, that literally goes down into the earth. And if you're in like a 100-story office building, there is a pole at the base that goes into the earth to ground all of the energy. Otherwise, things blow up. You get electrical current that fries wires. You get all kinds of shorts in the system and fires and all these things. And that's similarly how it works in the body. If you don't have a way to ground your energy, you get too much energy. So in depression, it's like you don't have enough energy. It's stuck and it's sluggish and it's not moving. And in anxiety, you have too much energy and it's like all up here. It's like a wildfire burning out of control, and everything feels frantic and everything feels crazy and everything feels disconnected. And so what you need to do is to ground that energy, so then you come back into your center line, back into that balanced state, so that you can feel your joy and you can express it, and you can be present with people, and you can be present in your life, and you can be aware when there's things coming on that require your attention, even like very challenging things, but you're present with them instead of you go flying off and the sky is falling, the sky is falling. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I love it. I love your relating it to the like electricity and all of that, because that really gives me a much like a tangible thing to relate it to, especially the grounding energy. And I relate much more to the anxiety than the depression. So I can relate to, yeah, absolutely. Those experiences of like, it's kind of like everything's just like firing like crazy, right? Like you said, it's all right in your mind and needing to ground, which for me, yoga is, you know, an amazing way to do that. So I guess my next question around that specifically is do you have any, I don't know, exercises that people could take on for those? Again, I'm not sure how you work with your yoga. Is there things people can do at home, or do they have to be doing yoga? Do you have studios around the world? Do you have just stuff online? Like, I'm not sure how it all works.
Sure. I would love to have studios all over the world, and that's coming. If you guys listening, you know, if you want to learn how to become a trained EM yoga teacher, then check us out. We have quite a few trained yoga teachers. And you can find classes all over the country and in Canada as well. And we've got a few in Europe. But there's practices that you can do, and we're starting to put more and more online libraries. But I can show you a few things right here. But I also want to say this. Everything is interrelated in the body, right? And in the energy systems. And, you know, in yoga, most people, they'll work with the chakras. That's the one system most yogis have heard of. But we have 9 energy systems in the body. And just like the physical body, you could say, okay, I'm going to work with my blood, the pulmonary system. Okay. And you can, you know, work with the heart, and you can do blood cleaning protocols, and you can, you know, try to get your heart rate variability to be more robust. But you see where I'm going with this is that is intimately related to your respiratory system and to your digestive system and to the system that holds everything together. And I can never say that word, so I'm not even going to try to, but all the muscles, tendons, and ligaments, right? And the fascia. It's also related to the detox system of the skin and the small and large intestine. And so everything's connected. Nothing works isolated. And the same with your energy system. So there's absolutely techniques that you can do that you can pull out when you're in like something is up for you right now. And I'm going to show you a couple things right now that you can do for depression and for anxiety. It's really helpful to have an ongoing practice. And of course, you know this, right? Because you're a yogi as well. So that, you know, just like a disease pattern in the body, for example, cancer, right? One of the most terrifying patterns of energy that can happen in the body. It doesn't just show up overnight. It has been growing in the body anywhere from 12 to 17 years before it is noticed on, you know, diagnostic tools. So it's the same thing with these anxiety and depression. you can have an event that happens that makes you depressed, right? That's an isolated event. So somebody dies and that you're very close to, and you go through a grieving process, and then you might be depressed for, maybe a full year, maybe even 2 years, right? Especially if it was someone very close to you, a sibling or a child or a partner, the depression that goes with that can last for quite some time. But that's also a different kind of depression than somebody that suffers from sort of a blanket depression that may or may not be connected to a specific event. And the same thing with anxiety. You can have anxiety come up from a specific event, or you can have anxiety that's sort of more diffuse and just sort of, that can be something that is habitual for you, which is another rule of energy, right? So energy needs to move, it needs space to move, it moves in particular patterns, and it forms habits. And so you might have a habit of depression, or a habit of anxiety, or a habit of anger, or a habit of grief. Like, all of these things form habits in the body, just like you might have a habit of stomach aches or a habit of headaches, right? Any kind of physical disease pattern is also a habit. So if you want to start to really shift out of those habits, you need to create different habits. And that's where your daily energy medicine yoga practice comes in, is to start to create better habits to replace the habits that are causing you difficulty in your life. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I love it. And I, again, love your terminology. I love the habits, because I don't know, to me, like, looking at anxiety and depression from the level of a habit, right? A way of being, or a habit, right? A choice we potentially keep making as far as that goes. Like, that's really powerful. It kind of makes it a little less, I don't know, daunting, I guess, when I think of it that way. So awesome.
And it's not even so much, it's not a conscious choice that we keep making. And so I think that's really important as well, because a lot of people, if you have any kind of issue that you're struggling with, again, whether it's mental, physical, spiritual, you can really start to beat yourself up of like, why can't I be better at this? Or why am I still depressed today? The world is beautiful and I can't feel it. And then you start to heap that onto yourself on top of whatever it is that you're already going through. And so it's not that you're making a conscious choice. And I think what you said is really spot on. It really it takes it out of the personal to talk about them as habits in our energy fields. And then it's much simpler to work with your energy than to work with your willpower, because your willpower is not anywhere near as strong as your energy systems. And we actually have a whole energy system. I talked about 9. We have one energy system that one of its main jobs is to keep you stuck in your habits. Now, that sounds like it's a horrible thing, but it's got a lot of other things that it's doing. And the main thing that it's doing is keeping you alive. And so when you try to shift out of a habit, it's like, oh no, what's going on? Everything was good. Like, it doesn't really care if you're thriving in your life. It wants you to be alive. And so if you want to thrive in your life, you need to work with those energy systems and start to calm them down so that you can make the shifts and changes that you want to make in your life. And some of these things are, depression is a bit harder to work with, only because you actually have to do these practices, right? And I've worked with some clients that are so depressed that they can't even do these very basic and simple practices.
Right.
Even some of them that are, I'm like, well, you can just lie in bed and visualize these practices. And, but I'll give you something that you can do for that as well, because no matter where you are, you can start to change and shift, but you do have to have the desire to do that, because it only works if you do the work.
Absolutely. So as far as like emotions go, we've been talking a little bit about that, like, right. You talk about emotions being, obviously it's a vital role to, being healthy as people. So we can either, right, push them down, stifle them, not allow them to move through us, or we can express them. Can you talk a little bit about that balance, and how does that tie in with EM yoga?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad that you brought that up, because I think that is one of the top 5 keys of being healthy, is to be able to work with and process your emotions. And you do not want to stuff them down. That, like, period, like, do not do that, because what happens is, and you've probably heard this in yoga classes, the issues are in the tissues, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we don't express our emotions and feel them and process them and then release them, they get lodged in the physical body. And they, at the least detrimental, it causes some tightness in your musculature. At the most detrimental, it leads to serious disease patterns, because they stop the blockages of the neural pathways and the messaging system in the brain, and they start to cause a disconnect. And we have the science now behind that, and we've had that since the 80s or 90s, when Candace Pert came out with her groundbreaking book, The Molecules of Emotion. And I quote her in my book because it's so important that we understand the value of our emotions, and that we understand that they are only energy. And so it's the stories that we put behind the emotions that then we latch onto and can hold onto and hold them for years and years and years and years, and not be able to release them and learn the lessons or learn the information. That's what I really feel, that emotions are just giving us information. And if we listen and harvest that information, we learn valuable lessons, and then we release the energy. And you notice that in little kids, right? If you see them having a tantrum,
Mm-hmm.
and they have this tantrum, and it goes and it goes and it goes, and then at some point the energy of that dissipates, and it gets less and less. And then they're just kind of lying and they're crying a little bit and sobbing, and a couple little chokes keep coming up, and then they're just calm again. And then they're like, okay, mom, can I have a popsicle? Mm-hmm. Right? So they're not like holding on to whatever it was, unless it was that you wouldn't give them a popsicle, right? But they don't hold on to the story of it. They feel it. They let it express through all of them, and then they release it. And the same thing with the trauma response in the body. We have these systems in the body to release trauma, but at a certain age, we stop and we stifle all of that, because we get these environmental cues that it's not okay to start crying in public or to scream and yell when something bad happens to you. And so we stop feeling, and we try to shut that down. And that is one of the main causes of depression. Mm-hmm. You've probably heard this as well, that depression is anger turned inward. Mm-hmm. And so if we don't have a way to express that anger, and especially women who have been denied the even possession of that emotion for so long, and have been just demonized for any expression of volatility or even assertiveness, right? Then you can see why those emotions tend to get pressed down. So it's really, really important. And that is the whole lens through the second book, Energy Medicine Yoga Prescription, is this 5-element theory, which gives us a way to access our emotions and work with them and process them in a daily way on the mat, out in your world, so that you can release and transform the difficult emotions into the balanced and positive, beneficial emotions, and start to, release the residue of years of stuffing emotion down.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah. When you said something about the children, right? Like people who have had kids or have had young kids in their life can totally remember or relate to those times when, the toddler has the tantrum or whatever. And it is it's a beautiful thing to look at as an adult, to see them go through the whole process. Maybe not always exciting to hear when you're, but right. And then be able to try to take on that way of being, as in process whatever's going on. And then maybe it's not in a business meeting or something like that. Right. But process what's going on and take care of yourself. Animals to me also, do something similar. We were just talking about our dogs before we hopped on Zoom today. And Tylee, our dog, yesterday, she was chasing a squirrel in our backyard. And we have a lot of vines, it's very tropical here in coastal North Carolina. So there's a lot of vines and stuff growing out of the ground. And she got caught, there was one that got caught up in her leg, and she freaked, she got really upset and scared, and it, scarred her. She has some scrapes and stuff along her leg. And I tell you, a whole day, all she wanted to do was just be by herself and be in her own space and heal or deal with whatever had happened, right? Process all that for herself. And then the next day she was back to, taking on the world again. And I looked at that as a pretty beautiful thing. I'm she knew what she needed to do. She knew that, I'm not going to go run the beach today. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sit here and deal with what just happened. And then I'll be back, in the game tomorrow. So anyways.
And animals are such a perfect example of, first of all, grounding. They've
Yes.
got 4 paws and they're always on the earth, right? They're never wearing rubber-soled shoes. They're just always 4 paws on the earth. And that is, we can get grounding through our animals by, by hugging them, snuggling with them, because electrical energy moves between electrical beings, right? It's why you can rub your feet on the rug and then go shock your little brother, right? Because you've got we are electrical beings, right? That's why that grounding piece that we started talking about earlier is so important, is we have to ground our energy. And one way to do that is to walk barefoot on the earth. And I encourage people to do that all the time, especially if you're suffering from depression or anxiety. You really want to get your feet on the ground. You want to get out into nature and be available to the frequencies of the earth. The earth actually puts out a standing wave of frequency. The 7.83 is it varies slightly, but that's generally the frequency that it is. And when we don't spend enough time in that frequency, we actually get sick. When they sent the astronauts off into space the first few times when they were testing everything, they were getting called space sickness. They didn't know what was going on with them until somebody put a Schumann resonance, that's the name of the resonance, that 7.83 standing wave, put a Schumann's resonance generator in the spaceship, and everything resolved again. Because if we're not in that resonant field that we vibrate to as well, we don't feel well. We get nauseous and dizzy and sick and depressed and anxious and all of those things that we're talking about here. We need to be outside in the world, in nature. And I think that's, especially with anxiety, I think that's a huge issue that's going on in today's world, is everybody's inside and they're on computers and they're on their phones and they're just not engaged in the world. And I mean, this is one of the reasons I'm sure you're doing this summit, is that depression is the number one issue afflicting the entire world. It's no longer just a Western phenomenon, a Western world phenomenon. This is happening all over the world, and it's something that really needs to be addressed.
Absolutely. Yeah. And absolutely getting into nature, being outside, wherever you live, even if you're right in a city, at least get out into the fresh air and see the tree on the side of the road or whatever. But that it does, there's like a beautiful grounding connection there when we can get out into nature. So one other thing related to, I guess, the physical body and how that can affect our mental body, right? Like, what about things like toxins? How does, obviously in yoga, most people who do yoga know that, right? You can be doing a lot of detoxing. Can you talk about toxins as it relates to EM yoga, as well as how can toxins affect or influence things like anxiety and depression?
Yeah. I mean, we do a lot in EM yoga for detoxing the body that it is really different from in the traditional yoga practices, at least that I was familiar with. The big one is doing twists, right? That's how you detoxify, you do twists. Well, that's great for what it does. It really actually does do quite a lot with the large and small intestine and all that sort of thing. But we work a lot with the lymph directly with the body, points called neurolymphatic reflex points. And so we work with points all over the body that help to detox specific organs, and it's really powerful work. But one of the other things that we talk about, and that's really important, is working with the microbiome. So that's your healthy gut bacteria, and it's actually bacteria, it's viruses, it's myceliums, it's fungus, and they all work together. There's hundreds of thousands of different varieties, and it's about like 3 pounds worth in your gut, in your intestinal tracts, and as well, interestingly enough, all on your skin, on the outside of your body, because at one point the outside and the inside skin were connected, and so they actually are the same. They have the same it's not quite dermatomes, but they speak to each other, right? Because they were the same at one point. So, and the studies being done on the microbiome and the effects that it has on our minds and the effects it has on everything in our lives is quite profound. And depression is one of the things that the studies have been showing. that are affected by the microbiome. So if you eat a lot of toxins, or not even just eat a lot of toxins, like we are in a toxic soup, right? So if you don't do things that help to detox the body and try to mitigate the toxins that you do intake in the body, then that can really have a profound effect on the microbiome, which can then affect your mental states. And so it's important to detox. I don't know if I'm allowed to, can I plug somebody on this?
Sure.
Okay, so this is what, there's a lot of talk about glyphosates and the things that are harmful for us. And I had never heard anyone say what you can do about it. So I was always just in this, again, feeling depressed about it, because glyphosates are water soluble and in the air and in the water, and you're breathing them and you can't get away from them. And there's nothing you can do. We're all going to die, right? And that's a very depressing thought. And then I found the work of Dr. Zach Bush, and he is just brilliant. And if you don't know him, he's actually in your neck of the woods. You could actually go and have a session with him. Maybe you already have.
I haven't. No, I've heard of him, but I know I haven't done work with him. So
yeah, he is just brilliant. And he has a product. It was called Restore. They just changed it to Biome, I think. Anyway, but you can Google him and find him out. But it is actually a product that restores the integrity of the gut wall and starts to help restore the microbiome and mitigate the effects of glyphosates. So I tell everybody about him because I just think he's brilliant. He's one of the people that is going to really help us in this next incarnation of going from a culture that's decimating the planet to a culture that's going to heal and support the planet. And he's one of those people. So making sure that you have a healthy gut bacteria, I think is really crucial if you're suffering from depression or anxiety, because it's those kind of things that you don't really think of that would have an effect on how you feel. But it really does have a strong effect. So it is something to check out.
Absolutely. And I mean, my background is in nutrition also. So obviously probiotics are a big thing in that world as far as people taking something like that. But do you have any other recommendations in that world? I guess, right. We're eating more natural foods and things that have more natural bacterias, et cetera, variety, all that kind of stuff. Anything else there?
Yeah, I mean, I just made a sourdough bread this morning that had been sitting on my counter souring for, 3 or 4 days. And so you want to try to get a lot of fermented foods and things that are from your own environment.
So before we wrap up, I want to make sure that we get to the exercises that people can do. So I'd love it if you'd give people something in both the arena of anxiety and depression before we wrap up, so they have something to walk away with and practice today.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm going to give you first is, it's not only for depression, but if you're depressed, this is going to be a really good thing. So especially if you're having trouble doing your kind of baseline for anything. And what I'll say, I'll pull back for a second and say that the baseline that you want to do is called the wake up. It's this daily routine. It's like 5 or 6 moves. You can find it on my website. It's in both of my books. I've got YouTubes all over the place showing you how to do it. So it's really easy. You can get it for free and check that out. But for some people, if you're really, really depressed and you just can't even get out of bed in the morning, one of the things that you can do is make these sounds that are for the 5 elements to help move the emotion from the challenged into the balanced aspect of that emotion. And if you can't do anything else, and my teacher Donna says this all the time, just make these sounds and it will start to move the energy, and then you can start to do something else. So I'm going to make these sounds and we can all do it together. But one of the other things that I want to give you while I'm doing this is just putting your hand over your forehead and your other hand at the base of the skull right before it becomes the neck. And holding here is also helps for that depression energy, that fearful energy, and it helps to actually bring forth courage, which if you're depressed, it's like you have a lack of courage to even be present in your life. Okay, so you can hold that if that feels good to you. You can do it lying in bed. Like if you're really depressed and you just can't even get out of bed in the morning, just lie like this. Even if you're lying there all day long, you are starting to help move energy. And then you'll make these sounds, and we can do one at a time together. So the first one is WHO, inhale. The next one is SH. The next is HA. The next is that Ujjayi breath, which is that yogic breath. It's a little bit of a pressure down on the glottis in the back of the throat. Some people call it the Darth Vader breath. Sounds like this. And the next is S. So you could do those all together. You could lie like this and do those.
Awesome. Thank you. I love that. And I love that you tied into if someone is really, really depressed and can't make it out of bed, like that is something you can actually practice while laying in bed if you can't make it out. So I love it. Thank you. That's beautiful.
Yeah, you're welcome. And then, if you're, get one of my books and then just while you're lying in bed, just kind of flip through it and you can start to visualize these practices. Even if you're like, oh, this isn't even going to work. Why am I bothering? Okay, keep that in your mind. That's okay. It doesn't matter. And then read the practice of the wake up. Just read it through, and that is going to start to get the energy in the body doing what you're reading. You'll start to visualize it, and then you'll notice the next day you're like, I kind of feel like getting up today. I wonder why. You don't have to wonder why, just keep doing it, because the energy will start to follow where your attention goes. So so that's one way to do. And I'm going to show you now something for anxiety. Excellent. I'm going to slide back a little bit from the computer so that you can see me a little bit more. So you're just going to, what we're going to do is tent our fingers together like this. So all the fingers and the thumb are touching. And then we're going to move down through each of the chakras. So we're going to circle around and go crown, third eye, heart, navel, and then you're going to flatten your hands over the lower belly. So the thumbs are at the navel, but the fingers flatten, so you don't do the bottom two chakras the same way. And we're going to do that, and we're going to make that HA sound as an exhale, and we'll do it all at once. So inhale, sweep the arms up. Take another breath here. And then you can do one more breath here. And your little dog got up and started wagging her tail because he was like, "Ooh, that feels so good."
Yep, she was. She got back down again.
They pick up on what we're doing. So
she did. She just came over here now after you said that because she was very excited. She has her stuffed hamster in her mouth and she really wants to show it to me.
Nice. So yeah, so doing that thing, bring down, it's called bringing down the flame, and it's literally like bringing that anxiety down, getting yourself back into the center of the body and dispelling with that HA, dispelling that that really challenging, buzzy energy.
I love it. Thank you so much for that. And it is amazing, everyone watching, if you've never done anything yoga or breath work or anything, like it's so powerful. Like little simple things like what you just took us through are so transformative. So thank you for doing that. So I want to make sure that you have a chance to let everyone know where they can learn more about you if they want to work with you further or just learn more about your books, your website, all that kind of stuff.
Sure. If you go to energymedicineyoga.net, energymedicineyoga.net, you can find everything, articles and free information about different things and links to classes and retreats and all kinds of stuff. And then how to become a certified energy medicine yoga teacher if you want to do that as well, and just start to spread this word out there even more. So we welcome you all into the tribe and help us change the planet one energy at a time.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Are there any last insights, anything else you want to leave people with before we wrap up?
What I really like to leave people with is the knowledge that you have this all within you. This is your birthright. And this work is simple and easy and elegant and so, so powerful. So if words like energy or yoga kind of make you go, ooh, I don't know if that's for me, keep that skepticism, but just try one or two little things and see. The work is easy and the results are profound. And there's no reason for you to suffer. My teacher shares this, that she says she has never, ever met a person that couldn't heal themselves. So you have that all within you. And all I've done is written up some instruction manuals of how to use what you've already got. So I just encourage you to check it out. You don't need to suffer. You don't need to struggle. We have all the gifts within us. So please come and check them out so that you can thrive in your life too.
I love it. Thank you, Lauren. I really appreciate this. This has been an awesome conversation. And thank you so much for all the amazing work that you're up to in the world and spreading it far and wide. So I appreciate it. And thanks for your time today.
Awesome. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate getting an opportunity to share with your community as well.
Absolutely. And thank you everyone who's tuning in for showing up for yourself. That's the number one step, is to show up for yourself. And by watching this right now, you are. So we're so excited that you're here for you and working on yourself. And we will see you on the next one. Thanks, everybody. Hey everyone, I just wrapped up another great class with Lauren Walker, and she talked with us about energy medicine yoga. I love talking about yoga. I believe that I mentioned that on this call and in this class. It's one of my big passions, and it is so helpful for so many millions of things in our physical health, mental health, spiritual health, you name it. So I'm so glad that she was able to talk with us today about her energy medicine yoga, or EM yoga. So she talked obviously a lot about energy, and one of the first rules of energy being it needs to move, right? Energy is needing to move through our body. And if it doesn't, it can get stuck. It can create all sorts of different issues in our life, whether that's creating anxiety, depression, physical ailments, all sorts of different things. And she mentioned that it is easier to work with energy than willpower, right? So she talked all about this model of energy yoga and how we can apply it in our life, energy medicine yoga. So I asked her, how can this EM yoga help someone specifically suffering from anxiety? So, right, she talked about anxiety being this fire element in our body, right? It's hot, it's moving, it's shaking, right? It's this fire element. It's this high, buzzy energy. And it's really like this disconnect from life because we're not grounded. And I can totally relate to this in the moments that I am in the habit of anxiety, right? So can you relate to that also, right? This disconnection from life because you're not grounded. And she related it to electricity, right? Like the third prong in a plug, if you're going to plug a lamp into the wall, right, is that grounding prong, right? So it's using EM yoga is you're trying to ground your energy, ground that high buzzy energy that makes you feel disconnected from life. So that's one of the ways that it can help you. And then she talked about depression being the water element, right? If you are depressed or have suffered with depression regularly or intermittently, maybe you feel like you're underwater, right? She gave that as a representation. So, right, and this is the case of mental and physical energy that is stuck in your body, right? And again, that first rule of energy is it needs to move. So when that mental, physical energy gets stuck, it can lead to depression. So obviously, you know, if you are able and willing to do things like yoga and physically go to a class or do yoga on your own or one of the exercises that Lauren mentioned, awesome. And what I thought was really, really profound is she talked about an exercise you can do if you are so depressed that you are not able to get out of bed, right? So she walked us through this. She helped us make these different sounds through our breathing to help move that energy. She also showed us different ways to hold our head and our hands and in order to move that energy. So I highly recommend you take that on if this is something that you're really struggling with, that you take on these exercises. So I appreciate you so much for tuning into this latest class. And once again, the first step is showing up for yourself. And just the fact that you're here listening and watching right now is proof of that. So thanks so much for tuning in, and we will see you on the next one.